Before the video starts, I'll just ask real quick if you could leave a like or a comment because it gives my videos 10 to 20 times the views, so any like or comment has a pretty large impact. Thank you. As you'll probably see in this video, Rust is a brutally difficult game, especially for a new player like myself. In this video, I'll go over the devastating losses and defeats of the progression cycle, and in part 2, I'll go over the successful progression and how it keeps you coming back for more. While I am new to playing Rust, I've seen several hundred hours of Rust YouTube content, so I know where to go and what to do to progress. After about a week on a monthly wipe server getting my bearings, it was time to try out Wipe Day with no blueprints. For those that don't know, Wipe Day in Rust means that the entire map is wiped of all player-made builds and everyone has to start from scratch. For my Wipe Day, I chose a max population weekly server to play with 2 of my friends. I joined in, checked the map, and decided to live near some good monuments, while also remaining distant from the larger bases. What I didn't realize was that on a max population server, there were about 30 other people with the exact same idea. This is the first large point of competition in the aggressive progression cycle. Players who get together with their team, get weapons, and get a base down in a good spot first will find themselves ahead of many other players. I, however, took a naive approach. I told my friends where to go, and without meeting up, we started gathering resources on the way there. But, split up as we were, whenever we got enough resources and got to the build location, we were picked off. This is where the frustration began. This strategy had worked before on the monthly server only because it had a lower population and people were already established. Instead of changing strategies after half an hour of failure, we kept doing the same thing. At this point, people were already progressing towards guns. We were beginning to encounter well-armed players in our potential build spots. This meant that getting a start would only be more difficult, and we would fall further behind. In a position like this, players who had fallen behind like ourselves face a choice. We could go to the same build spots where there were already geared players that would potentially bring our progression to a standstill, or build in a less desirable location, which would slow us down and set us even further back. Instead of picking one of these, I made an even worse decision. I just kept looking for a new, but still decent build spot. This meant we were not progressing at all, and we just kept failing. This brought morale to an all-time low, and my friends decided to take a break, which was completely reasonable. I, however, was too stubborn and decided that maybe I should just switch servers to get back on my feet. This was quite a gamble as it would set me back to square one, which I was essentially already on, and it would give players even more time to get ahead of me. Despite this, I hopped on an almost full server and began the same process. Now let's take a step back from the progression for a moment and think about how you would be feeling in my shoes. I've been failing to get a start for about 2 hours, my friends have gotten offline, and I have no one to blame but me. It's this last thing that's of the most importance. I can't blame the game for my lack of success. This means that no matter how angry I get, I will most likely continue playing at a later date, even if I rage quit. But even though the thought of turning off my Xbox was tantalizing, my Wipe Day was far from over. For the next 4 hours, I got resources, tried to find a good spot to build, and died. I often got very close to the start I wanted, but it would always be taken away from me.
I just can't do it. I can't take this shit no more, man.
Finally, I managed to get a small base down in a decent location. I immediately turned off my Xbox, took a shower, and ate some food. I returned feeling optimistic and ready to finally catch up to everyone else. My friends were back online and were headed to the base. The events that followed are the most soul-crushing, infuriating things that have ever happened to me in a video game. My friend had just arrived at the base, but he was unable to get in immediately because I didn't have the right kind of door locks yet. I went out to farm barrels to get code locks, which would allow my team easy access to the base. I came back to my humble 2x1 base, put away my loot, and heard some players outside. I got my bow, opened my doors, and was immediately killed. From the death menu, I could hear a player breaking my respawn point with a spear. Frantically, I respawned, spammed X to close the door, and closed the wrong one, letting the player into my base. I died, stood up, and turned off my Xbox as fast as I possibly could. I had lost 6 hours in about 5 seconds because of my stupidity. And of course, I was so angry that obviously I wouldn't take a clip, hence the improvised footage. Now, after such a loss, you would think any player would be driven away from the game entirely. However, the player knows they lost because of their mistakes. They take this as the game and the other players beating them, which means they have to make up for the loss with an even greater victory later on. This sounds a bit like gambling, which it sort of is. You gamble your time and mental stability for a good experience. This is one of Rust's defining qualities. You can lose, and lose so terribly that you can't immediately process it, but you will always want to get back up and prove that you can do better.